The videos, the photos, the headlines, the stories, the reporting of what we saw from this weekend on, there's no words to describe how horrific it was. There dead bodies, babies in cages, people killed, people seeing their families die. It's just horrific. Just this morning, there were headlines that Hamas beheaded babies. I mean, there's no words to describe this at all. And I want to say first, many lawmakers have unequivocally stood with Israel, condemning Hamas. But there are some on the left that have shifted away from their support in Israel. And I want to get your take on that. I want to read you a statement from Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She said this, quote, "The path to that future must include lifting the blockade, ending the occupation, and dismantling the apartheid system that creates the suffocating, dehumanizing conditions that can lead to resistance." End quote. "As long as our country provides billions in unconditional funding to support the apartheid government, this heartbreaking cycle of violence will continue." And some of her colleagues did immediately come out and condemn that statement. But what do you make of that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, Rashida Tlaib is an anti-Semite and not a serious person, let alone somebody who's deserving of being in the United States Congress, along with Ilhan Omar and a few other anti-Semites in the Congress. They're no longer afraid to hide behind anti-Semitism. It's now out in broad daylight. And so it's really important that Democrats and somebody like me, who's a Democrat who believes unequivocally in the right not only of Israel to defend itself, but in human rights and in the laws of humanity, and somebody who saw the footage and broke down, because this is a medieval rampage, is what this was, by absolute terrorists. And they're not freedom fighters, as some of my Democratic colleagues call them. They are terrorists. And so when Democrats speak up to unequivocally condemn anti-Semitic people in comments like we hear, is when we will see real progress, right? It's when people will speak out against their own parties. It's when friends will speak out against their own friends. And quite frankly, it's why I call on Harvard alums like myself to speak out against these students. The time for being quiet is over. And I will tell you, if you look at some of these videos, to see women tortured and raped, to see babies beheaded, to see families murdered execution style, at what point does this subhuman behavior, at what point do we say that this is absolutely outrageous? And to see institutions equivocate, to see companies afraid to speak or wanting to toe the line, we have to take receipts right now of those who are afraid to speak. And Brittany, let me put it into proportion. 9/11 was an absolute tragedy, one of the worst terrorist attacks in the history of this nation. 3,000 American killed, 20 years ago. Proportionally in Israel, it's about 31,000 killed and 77,000 injured, if you look at population differences. This is their 9/11. And in terms of those who call for de-escalation, or those who focus their attention on the Israeli government, nobody was calling for de-escalation after 9/11. Nobody was chastising the American government to stand down. And they better not, and they will not, tell Israel what to do here. Israel has to do what it needs to do to eradicate Hamas from this earth, to eradicate the problem of Hamas-sponsored terrorism for the next 50 to 100 years, as Israeli security officials have said. This is a problem that won't go away until it's neutralized.
You straight up called Representative Rashida Tlaib an anti-Semite.
Yep.
Do you think top Democratic lawmakers, I'm talking about President Biden, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, do you think that they should be calling this out directly, A? And B, do you think there should be any punishment here? Should they be kicked off committees? What does that look like to you? Because you're running for Congress. Yep. These could be your colleagues soon.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar got kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee, for similar conduct, and this is why. Right, this is the United States standing for humanity, standing behind our most important ally, standing behind those who are fighting terrorism on the front lines. And to see comments from Rashida Tlaib, I think when politicians are afraid to speak, when they mince words, and when they're afraid to be direct, is when danger happens. She is an anti-Semite. Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite. And as a Democrat, I'm calling out that colleague on my side of the aisle to say that those fringe views do not represent the broader Democratic Party, and only when Democrats speak up against those the far left extreme elements in our party will we be moving forward, in terms of progress here. So I'm not afraid to mince words here. When Ilhan Omar says that Jews are all about the Benjamins, that's anti-Semitic and dangerous behavior. When Rashida Tlaib calls Israel an apartheid state, that's anti-Semitic and dangerous behavior, and words matter here. And it's time the United States speaks with one voice, that we unequivocally stand behind Israel.